Andrea, what is that big bird called that lives in the woods and makes a hooting sound?
An owl.
There you go.
And you say it now.
Owl.
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 Owl. Owl.
An owl.
An owl.
Yeah, exactly. I knew you said it that way.
There's a little bit of a W in there, I think. An owl. 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 It's so many letters to get into one syllable. You just make it two.
Well,
Owl.
but there is a W in there. Anyway.
Bunza.
I was trying to figure out if it was an owl was gonna come up in this episode, and I think it actually does, because one of the masks looks like one.
Oh yeah, there's an owl mask, and this is a reference for 3 of our listeners. We haven't even opened the episode yet, but I was telling you when you were giving me a hard time about how I say that word that it reminded me of Axe from the Animorphs, who's an alien teenager who's obsessed with cinnamon buns but doesn't talk with a physical mouth unless he's in a human morph. And so he's really tickled by the way words sound, and he's always talking about cinnamon buns, and that's what owl.
I wish I had any idea what you were talking about, but it sounds fun. We
should, for one of our off-season episodes, we should read the first Animorphs book, because it's anyway, I could talk about Animorphs forever, but I'm not going to do that because you're listening to The Watchers, a show where 2 women from opposite ends of New Jersey watch TV about New Jersey. I'm Andrea.
And I'm Jodie, and this season we're talking about the Showtime series Yellowjackets. And today we're recapping the season 2 finale, storytelling. Have you seen the news, Andrea? There's a new pope. The smoke signal went up. There's a new pope. There's a new antler queen. Possibly the first antler queen. Even though I don't really think the antler queen is a thing, but yes.
We really have shoehorned the actors who have to talk about this show into using the terms we've decided for them.
Yeah. This was I feel like I say this every week. This was a wild one, but this is it. And this was a controversial one.
Yeah, people are angry.
Yeah, guys, death threats are not really appropriate in general, but especially about a TV show. Let's just...
Yeah, it's just a little note there.
Just a note.
Yeah, our listeners who who we've talked to a little bit and interacted with a little bit, I think are a little more reasonable.
They're
thankfully.
Not sending death threats to Ashley Lyle, but...
And when we have 2 Jersey people telling you not to send death threats, that's how you know that these are inappropriate death threats.
Yeah, if anything, we're pro-aggression on this podcast.
Exactly.
Oh my goodness.
I don't know how to talk about this episode.
I know. I've been kind of dreading it, actually.
Yeah, and I think you and I are generous watchers in general with the show. And
we know what it is.
And
what it's not.
Yeah, and also it's really hard to make a television show. And I think their team is pretty small from what I understand, and it feels like something that comes with like a lot of heart and love behind it.
Yes.
And all of that makes it that much easier for me to be a little forgiving when choices are made that I'm not that aren't necessarily the choices I would have made. But it's not my fucking show.
That's right. And it's given us a lot of entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
Do we sound apologetic enough already for the fact that we're going to say some things that aren't absolutely glowing?
Yeah, I have a lot of love for this episode, though. There were a lot of things I really liked about it. There were a couple of things that I am still dealing with, and I don't know if I'm dealing with it or I'm still struggling with. And I don't know which things I'm struggling with because they were difficult things that happened in an episode to people who I have grown to love, to characters, I guess, whatever, I've grown to love, and which I'm struggling with because from a more like pulled back perspective in terms of like narrative that I'm not thrilled with. And I think that's what other people are struggling with too.
Yeah. It seems like the consensus that is not the hysterical consensus, I use that word purposefully, but the general consensus is that this episode felt a little too neat and a little too rushed. Neat meaning, the Walter ex machina of it all, and rushed in that Nat's death was incredibly fast and didn't kind of get the care it deserved, maybe. That said, and like you said, writing a TV show is hard, and we did get some good moments, some closure, some things happened that set things up. I did read somebody said, and production note, we are going to record an episode next week where we kind of go into the whole season.
Oh, right. Yes.
Theories, superlatives, ideas for the future, things that we kind of are wondering about. So today's going to be more of a straightforward recap of this last finale, and then we will sort of pontificate and wonder aloud next week.
Yeah, so that we don't end up with a 5-hour episode.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So maybe we should just get into it and start. We're going to start in 96 again because
it does. I hate to interrupt. I know we're getting into it, but it does feel strange to just treat this like
a normal episode.
But I think that's what we're gonna do here. So just roll with it. So like Jodie said,
and we can do a little bit of sort of closure at the end and thoughts about the whole thing. But I do think that with another week of sort of digesting, so to speak, gross, it might clarify our thoughts on the whole season.
I think so.
Okay. So, 96. Zombie plays.
That's right.
Little Cranberries again.
Uh-huh.
I was looking up the lyrics to it. I remembered it being something where Dolores O'Riordan, I don't know, O'Riordan? How do you say her last name?
Ow. I think it's O'Riordan. Yeah, it's just a lot of letters for one mouth.
Apparently wrote it after after 2 children were killed in an IRA bombing. So it's about the death of children, basically. So, and it starts with another head hangs slowly, child is slowly taken. Appropriate in some ways.
Yeah.
For the scene of them bringing Javi back from his drowning.
The music cues in the show are not subtle, and I love that.
No, they're not at all. But Travis gets real excited to see Nat again, which is heartbreaking because he thought she was going to be dead. I know. And she's doesn't have much to say. She just kind of says Javi's name and kind of looks back, and he sees them coming with Javi on a stick, which is kind of a rough way to transport somebody's younger brother.
I guess that was probably one of the less cumbersome ways of carrying him, I guess. But it just looks so like barbaric. Like it's like they've got him strung up for a pig roast already.
Yeah, it feels very inhuman. I noticed that, this is going to be the second time they eat somebody, right? And there was a lot of ceremony around the first one, and there was a lot of accident, and this was very methodical. This was very businesslike.
Yeah. Yeah. Even the ceremony of it felt very businesslike. Like they're really deciding what this is going to be like. I'm not saying anything new here, but it just really sunk in how much Travis has been through. He lost his dad first, which is hard enough. We know they had a strained relationship, but that actually almost makes it worse in a kind of strange way. But he's lost Javi three times, because he lost him when Javi ran away and they couldn't find him, and then he lost him again when Nat told him that he found his shorts.
Oh yeah.
And now this is the 3rd time he's had to say, he's had to reckon with the loss of his younger brother. And obviously this is the final one, and it is just, it's so sad. And the way they just kind of thunk his body down on the ground.
This is what I mean. It's also businesslike. I noted they put him down. Travis runs over and is untying his hands, but everybody just sort of resolutely walks inside, and they look a little upset, but it's just we're not going to belabor this. We're just going to keep moving.
There's something really interesting with the way the girls specifically in the earlier timeline handle death and mourning in particular. And it reminded me too of when Jackie's out on the pyre, and they leave Shauna too. And on the one hand,
it's it feels the chief mourner.
Yeah, exactly. And on the one hand, it's it feels like a sort of kind of respect to let them have, but on the other, it feels really distancing and a kind of abandonment.
Well, especially in this case, because this time, technically they didn't kill him, but they also kind of killed him. And so with Jackie, like, that was much less obviously their fault, right?
Right.
And so this feels even colder because of that.
Well, I think you just nailed it, because I think it feels like the ceremony of this and all that has come up as a way to kind of insulate and distance themselves from the actual act of what they're doing.
Right.
And I didn't necessarily feel that way with Jackie. That just seemed like they were people who were like unsure and uncomfortable of how to deal with what was going on.
Yeah. This feels like they've accepted that this is what they're doing. Except for the one who constantly gets blamed for it. Justice for Lottie. I just feel like, so Misty goes upstairs and Lottie hears her and asks why Travis was screaming. And Misty's just sort of matter of fact. She's like, we're going to eat Javi. We didn't even kill him.
We didn't even kill him exactly.
Yeah. But she explains what they came up with, and Lottie looks horrified. Mm-hmm. She's like, this is not what I was trying to do here.
Yeah. And I keep saying, like, Lottie hasn't really been a leader. They've just decided that they've put her in this role. And I realized this week that's not exactly true. It's not that Lottie wanted to be leading and in a position of authority, but in a very different way than what they've put on her.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this. Like, her ways of leading have been like hanging trinkets in trees and like also a little bit of like harming herself and encouraging others to do so. So not like totally wholesome things.
Right.
But there's a big difference between thinking that, you know, you want to make a sacrifice of some kind that is not lethal to what they ended up doing with the cards and the hunt. That's like a whole other level. She says, how could you let them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought that was interesting too.
Yeah.
Because it's like, you know, we think of Misty as being this like resourceful one, and the girls do kind of look at her as the one who can kind of get things done out there sometimes, but not as a leader in any way. And so Lottie to say...
But I think Lottie sees that Misty tends to lead from behind, like which is what she ends up doing in this scene even, you know. But she says, you started this, it's done, and it's going to save all our lives, so you better not make us feel bad about it now. And Lottie looks afraid.
Yeah, she gets so steely in that moment.
Yeah.
We've seen Misty turn that on a few times here and there in the last 2 seasons, but she really...
but not with Lottie, really.
No.
You know, this is like the first time that we've seen anything from Misty to Lottie that feels like her really being like, I actually don't think you're that important. And, you know, or not that you're not important, but that you're going to listen to me.
Right.
You know?
In fact, it's like Misty knows that the group thinks of Lottie as being important and needs her to be on board for this.
Exactly. But she's getting real manipulative about it, though, because she comes downstairs and she's like, yeah, Lottie's cool with it. She's happy about what we did. And it's like, no, she's not.
No. And she even, the language, like, Lottie's pleased with the wilderness's choice.
Yeah.
Is like, it sounds like some shit Lottie would say now.
Exactly.
Like, it's some stuff that... like the cult, the like character of Lottie comes into for sure.
And Misty sounds super confident when she says it. There's a weird sort of like, you can see the calculation on her face as she's talking to them. And she's the one that says, Shauna, let's get to it. Yikes.
I was this week I totally abandoned my stay away from Reddit and interviews until we've talked about the episode. I just needed, I really needed to be like, what are other people thinking? This week. And I was listening to an interview with Christina, and she was saying that, like, you know, the thing about Misty is just like, there's not a lot of self-reflection there. It's like she makes a choice and she goes with it, and then she just keeps on moving, because to have to like sit with any of that would probably undo her. Those weren't her words exactly.
Yeah.
But I think this is a good example of that. She's like, he's dead. We got to eat him, and it's just going to be what it's going to be.
And we can't have you sort of having us feel guilty and question what we did, because that's not going to get us anywhere.
Right, exactly.
So Shauna gets up, grabs the knife, and everybody kind of follows her outside. this is what I mean when I say they're very businesslike about it. Like you see this montage of them setting up like a table and like stripping him of his clothing. It was rough. I know I keep saying that, but it was.
And it's interesting. It's interesting because this is the first example of it, but it already felt so settled.
Yeah, it felt like they'd done it before. You know? And like, yes, Shauna's gutted a deer, but they didn't have to cut up Jackie. Jackie was like just feasted on.
She was low and slow, so she was.
So I don't. I don't want to think about it. I don't want to think about it. But this is the first time they've had to do it, and it doesn't look like it is.
Yeah. Shauna really just has some skill. I don't know.
Yeah. But I thought it was interesting that she pulled her scarf down over her eyes, which like
is fascinating.
Yeah, and it's reminiscent then of like all of the masks that they wear later, you know, to kind of cover the shame almost of it.
So much of this episode is them drilling down on the guilt, the like refusing to acknowledge, because it's not the refusing to feel guilt or shame. It's there. They feel so much guilt and so much shame, but it's the like refusal to acknowledge it and finding ways to hide it from themselves.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I thought that was really kind of important that she like covered her eyes for that. And everybody does look sad here. Like, it's not like they look like, because remember we commented last week about how Van looked like terrifying on the lake when she's staring at Javi while he died. I was kind of wondering if we were just going to see them be completely cold from now on, but they did look sad. They had tears in their eyes and everything, but they all just walked inside. Like, okay, this is what we do.
It just, there are moments where the wilderness, which I think, you know, as Lottie says later in the episode, whatever that is, whatever it is, the wilderness, whether it's in them or not, there are just moments where it really takes over, and then it you know, it ebbs and flows, and this is a moment where it's kind of ebbed and some of their humanity is still showing through there, but that doesn't mean they're not going to eat Javi.
Yeah. And so the next thing we see in 96, after she starts this process, she's told them all to go inside. It's just her. Is Ben hobbling back to the cabin.
His timing is so comical this season.
I know.
He is just always showing up at the best, worst time.
I know.
And it really is. If it weren't so sad, it would be. Well, it's both. It's sad and it's hilarious.
And I think at first he might think that like they got game or something, because he hesitates and starts to move forward. Yeah. And then he sees like Javi's clothes, I think.
Which Shauna neatly folded on that stool. I thought that was a really
nice little detail there.
Yeah.
Again, with the like order of things, like it just feels like they're placing this framework around what they're doing that is very like, we do this, then we do this, then this is how it's laid out. And
absolutely.
Yeah. But Nat comes up behind him and asks where he's been. And he tells her, so this may come into play later, he says, I figured out where Javi was hiding. You know, you and I can go. I think we can make it if the two of us go and stay there together. You know,
if only he'd gotten back just a few hours earlier, just right before the hunt would have been perfect.
Yeah, but then he would have been
but I just
part of it.
I would love that show. Nat and Ben hanging out in a cave together while the rest of them just slowly disintegrate.
I know.
Like completely fall apart.
Doing mushrooms and talking about how everything is love.
Exactly. They deserve that.
I'd like that too. But she is not having it. She says
he's like she literally he says, you know, you're not like the rest of these girls. He's like, you're not like other girls.
Yep. He pulls her, you're not like other girls. She says, actually, I'm worse. I let him die in my place. It was supposed to be me. And this is where we see the clip that we saw in the preview where she says, you're a good person, coach. You really don't belong in this place.
This is one of those examples that they don't often do on the show that we've praised them for, where it's like, okay, Nat, sort of. You kind of let him, like, you're leaving out some key components that maybe would have saved the cabin from maybe burning down. Yeah. Maybe, if you'd explained it a little more clearly.
Yeah, because all he got from that was that they hunted and killed Nat, but instead they killed Javi. There's no, like, context or explanation or anything for him there. So his mind can go to all sorts of places. Not that what they did was all that great, but there was a little nuance, like you said, that was missing from that conversation.
I think he might have waited till Nat wasn't in the cabin at the very least before he...
Yeah.
Anyway.
We see a quick conversation between Travis and Van.
I don't think we've ever seen the two of them really talk to each other.
I can't think of another time when it's been just the two of them. I'm sure maybe there is and we're just not thinking of it, but this was, you know, I've seen people talking about how Van has taken such a dark turn these past couple episodes. And I think it's true, but I also think that like we've mostly seen Van as a foil to Ty for a lot of this show, and this is we're starting to see Van as Van.
Yeah.
Especially now that we have 2021 Van as well.
Totally.
But this is what we were talking about with the guilt, right? Travis is like, you should be ashamed. And Van's like, but I'm not. I'm glad I'm alive. And you should be too.
Which is distinct from what I've felt from the other characters. Because I think she means it. I think there are other characters who, if they said, I'm not ashamed we did what we had to do, I'd be like, you could say that. But I kind of don't. Van, I mean, we've said all, like, Van's a survivor and we know that. And this is just another example of that. And then she does the most manipulative shit. Because they all need Travis to be on board with eating his brother so they can do it without dealing with the guilt that they're feeling about it. She says, like, let your brother save you after all he's been through. Like, she's like...
Don't you owe him that?
Yeah. Ugh. I hated that.
It's very manipulative for sure. But it seems to work.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, either it works or Travis sees the writing on the wall, which is that if he doesn't do this and take part in all of this, that he's just signing his own death warrant, basically.
Right.
He's also got more meat on him than the rest of them.
That's a good point.
We see a little quick foreshadowing of Ben desperately trying to start a fire in the cave. As someone who just recently rewatched the first season of Alone, if you don't have your what is it, your fire starter, you're pretty much
Prodigy.
You're pretty much out of the game early.
That's like the first thing. I also, total side note, you've been talking about Alone all this time, and early on I said I also watched Alone. I watched Naked and Afraid.
Okay. Yes. Related but different.
Which I feel like is like the off-brand version of Alone. Like Alone is for fancy people.
Slightly less serious version.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But either way, I also read a ton of books about children getting lost in the wilderness when I was a young person, and I know, first things first, you gotta build a fire.
Yes, you have to be able to make fire. It's how you boil water. It's how you cook food. It's how you stay warm.
Keep bugs and animals away.
Yep. It's how you protect yourself. Yeah. So, but Ben didn't have time to think about that when he realized that they were butchering Javi and had to turn around and go back.
And he had to Homer himself back into the bushes.
Exactly. On one leg. Oh, Ben. I think he's a little less sympathetic now, but still.
Yeah, only a little for me.
Yeah.
But yeah.
We'll get there. So Shauna's done her job. She comes in with the meat. Travis is holding that wolf carving that we were just talking about.
Which I'm so glad you reminded me of last week, so I knew to be properly sad about it.
Yes. Yeah. And then we get some really gross close-ups of the meat in this scene. And I know that it's not people, but it's still kind of gross. She picks up the heart and hands it to Travis.
That heart is a heart-ass heart. Like, it looks... Do you know what I mean? Like, it looks like the
it's off the set of Grey's
emoji.
Anatomy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's bulbous.
Perfect word. Perfect word.
And gross. She hands it to Travis, and everyone watches him.
I don't think she had...
For him to take a bite?
Like, I think she was like, you know, I'd love for you to be the first one to set this into the pan and get this party started. And he fully took a bite out of that heart.
I also thought maybe, like... in keeping with the bear situation, that they were going to like put it at the stump or something. Like, you know, just sort of make it like an offering of some kind. But no, they were hungry. After he bites it, he throws it in the pan. I was like, you could have just reversed that order.
Could have. Like, I guess he's going to, I was just about to say like, well, you know, he wanted his brother to be a part of him, but he's going to be whether he's cooked or not. So I don't know what that...
Yeah. I mean, I guess it was supposed to show how deep in he's just thrown himself into it.
Mm-hmm.
But they all put the meat on the pan. They're crowding the pan a little.
Gotta get a good sear on that.
Yeah. Ugh. But Misty brings some up to Lottie as well and says that she needs her strength. And we're really seeing Lottie lose her faith here.
Yeah. It's also, I have to remind myself, not that it would be okay otherwise, but I have to keep reminding myself that the girls don't actually know that Lottie has a diagnosed mental illness for which she's not currently medicated.
No.
It wouldn't be okay to treat her the way they're treating her, but I just can't imagine being in Lottie's position and having people like shape and reshape her reality around her and her place in it and telling her who she is and like what all like it just seems she's so scared in this episode, and it's like, of course she is in 96 and 2021.
Well, because I think she felt that she had something to hold on to with this sort of philosophy of the wilderness that she had crafted. Mm-hmm. And then when all this happens, she starts to really kind of see the fact that it's actually them doing it. Mm-hmm. She says, I thought it wanted what was best for us, and now I'm not so sure. And Misty is just like, and?
Yeah.
Like, eat your food. We need you. And she does.
It's rough.
But it's true. I think there's a chance that Shauna knows something about Lottie's illness, only because I think in the very beginning we do see when Lottie is looking for her medication and then finds it, Shauna's watching. But she doesn't know what it is.
No, and in 2023, if I see anybody taking a pill, I assume it's an antidepressant or an anti-anxiety or Adderall. Yeah. Like, it's going to be one of those three.
Yeah.
But in 96, it just wouldn't. We weren't talking assume. About. No.
Exactly. So then, what is the next thing that happens in 96?
Lottie comes down.
Right.
She's been playing, they've been like giving her the sort of like Mad Woman in the Attic role for a little bit, and she decides no more.
She's the protagonist of the Yellow Wallpaper.
Exactly. I was happy to see her come down because I was worried that's what was happening with her, that Misty was going to start acting more and more as the mouthpiece for Lottie, and they were just going to kind of hide her away now that her, her view of things isn't in accordance with what they want it to be.
Well, and that might have actually had something to do with why she made herself go downstairs and deal with them, was because she kind of felt like, wait a minute, like, I don't trust that Misty is actually explaining what's going on up here to people.
Yeah.
But they all look at her like she's risen.
Mm-hmm. Did you see who the first person to greet her at the bottom of the ladder?
No.
Mari.
Oh, of
the
course.
one who was talking shit yesterday.
Yeah.
That but fair weather girl.
Mari's her number one. Uh-huh. But yeah, they all look at her with this sort of like worshipful face, and they hug her. She kind of looks like, okay, don't know what to do here. Mm-hmm. But they ask Van to tell them a story.
There are 3 very sweet seconds in this episode, and it's those 3 when they're like, the truth about cats and dogs, or while you were sleeping again.
Or the Princess Bride. Yeah. Nope, we're not doing that. Van is going to tell them a story about the wilderness.
If you were Van, which movies, and we could say 96 or 2023, it doesn't matter, and you had to be the storyteller, which movies could you do that with?
Oh, like, gosh. At that time, 96. I think I was pretty into Tarantino at the time, embarrassingly enough. Unfortunately, it might have been Pulp Fiction. I also probably could have done it with Princess Bride. What other movies? Any of the Kevin Smith movies that had come out at that point. What year no, Clerks didn't come out till 95,
I don't think.
No, 94. Yeah. Oh, I could have recited the entirety of Clerks. Yes. I still can.
I couldn't have done, not in 96, I was too young. But if I were their age in 96, like thinking of those, I was just too young. Yeah. I would have been 10. So I think I didn't get into Clerks until I saw Mallrats, and I was like, what is this? Yeah. And then I went back, and then... whenever Mallrats came out,
I was working in the video store when Clerks came out, so
that's amazing.
Yeah, no, I would have just been annoyingly quoting Clerks the entire time. We're not even supposed to be here today.
They're like, we've been here for 9 months and you say it every day. Yeah. We get it, Jodie. We get it.
I would have been the first one killed. So, but as she's talking and as she's telling her little wilderness story, we start to see Ben outside gathering his supplies, his matches, his rope, his axe or hatchet, whatever that is that he's picking up. And Van is, weaving her yarn about the wilderness that was full of life but lonely and violent and misunderstood. Like, Van.
She's really reaching. Like,
she's in it.
Like, trying to make a myth out of this whole thing with the wilderness, building a house. And
very much taking over for Lottie in that, sort of romanticizing it as a sort of persona. And Lottie interrupts her.
I loved that.
Yeah.
I loved that.
Yeah. It was so, like, interestingly symbolic for her to be like, yeah, no, wait, actually, we're not talking about it like this right now. And she still kind of is. She says, like, you all hear it now too. But she kind of, she wants to step down. She's been given too much responsibility. She'd like to go back to her previous role as as just a grunt that gets water and, management has pushed her a little too far too fast into leadership position.
Yeah, I get it, man.
Yeah. Show any competence at anything and suddenly you have to take care of all of it. So, but she's like, I'd rather not.
Yep, I'm good. I got the shit kicked out of me I got the shit kicked out of me 3 days ago, and that's kind of that's where I tap out.
Yeah. But she says they're all protesting, and she's like, no, the wilderness chose who fed us. It's already chosen. And Ty, Misty, and Shauna, we get a shot of each of them sort of straightening up in their chairs. Misty literally stands like she's about to be crowned. They're all like, oh, who is it? Is it me?
Who?
Nope.
Yeah.
It's Nat. This was a wild scene.
Yeah. Yeah. It was
the coronation.
It was I have so many like conflicting feelings about this because again, this is Lottie saying the wilderness chose Nat based on what Misty has told her, first of all.
Right. Yeah, she doesn't know what actually happened exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
But I do think if I trust any of them to be like have some I don't even know what, like, moral compass through all of this. I don't even know if that's the right, I don't know what, but I think it's Nat, because it's, Nat's the one where it's like she doesn't deserve to be the leader, and I mean that in a way where like she's too good to have to deal with these girls, but she's maybe the only one in the group that I would trust if I were in their position.
The problem is the options there are she keeps them on the straight and narrow and keeps them from fully devolving, or they bring her down with them, which is much more likely because of the situation they're in.
Yeah.
They bring her down to their level. She looks frightened at first, and then we get this procession. Lottie walks up and kisses her hand. Jen stands up and like puts Nat's hand to her forehead. Mari bows.
Yep.
Akila curtsies, which is adorable.
The way they slip into just being like
teenage girls and little kids.
Misty does that really deep curtsy that's like, and they kind of giggle about it. And when that stuff pops up, I often find it really heartwarming. And this time it was like, but it was also unsettling.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And I noticed that when Misty did that, when she bowed down, Nat giggles, but Misty looks dead fucking serious.
That sounds right.
Yeah. And Van like puts her hand to her cheek. Ty holds her hand. Travis comes up and puts her hand on his chest like Lottie did with her hand. And he like takes a deep breath. That was wild. I did notice the last one to come up was Shauna.
Salty Shauna.
Yeah. She just kind of lowers her head for a second, like forced deference almost. And I didn't notice this at first, but then after the little bit later about her writing in her journal, I went back and watched the coronation scene again, and Shauna definitely is the least excited to be welcoming the new queen.
Girl, you're just the butcher. Like, sorry. What?
I mean, she feels, I think,
she also
so central to everything because she was Jackie's best friend, and Jackie was the first one of them who, like, they ate, and they kind of tiptoed around her grief for so long that I think maybe she also got some sort of, like, feeling that she was special somehow because of all of that. But
right. But she's a loose cannon in a group of loose cannons.
Yeah.
Like, she just, I don't even know how long ago, 24 hours ago, was screaming that they all ate her baby. So, like, I think it's been a little longer than 24 hours. But
Not
you know
much.
what I mean.
Not
like,
much. Yeah.
This week. So maybe, sorry, Shauna.
Yeah. And so we end 96 with this next scene, actually, of Shauna in the attic writing in her journal. I wrote down what it said. She said, "How could it not have been me when I was willing to do what it took to keep us all fed? I used to think it was Jackie who made me feel invisible." And it's like, I love the combination of, like, teenage girl angst journal writing
overlaid
with this, like, content that is so insane.
Just an angry, salty,
yes,
teenage girl.
But she smells smoke. And our captions let us know something's happening because we see women vocalizing eerily again. It's always a good indicator when they start vocalizing eerily. Yeah. Yeah. She runs down, yells for everyone to wake up. I noted that she grabs her journal, a few other things, her backpack, and Jackie's dress as she's running out of the attic. Yeah. I also went back and watched because we can talk about the whole Ben of it all. We forgot to mention Ben was watching them as this is important. Ben's watching them as they're, like, crowning Nat from outside.
Right. The one person who he has thought is redeemable up to this point, now he sees becoming their leader.
Exactly.
After she has told him that she let a young boy die.
Right. And that she's worse than the rest of them. But yeah, so I, for a moment, thought, well, who else could have lit this fire if it wasn't Ben? Because, of course, I'm in my head still defending Ben. And I was like, maybe it's Lottie. But then I went back and watched, and Lottie was sleeping on the floor when it started.
Yeah. And the door, being... So, it didn't occur to me. This is just my, like, goldfish brain watching it. I'd forgotten that Ben was right there 20 minutes ago.
Yeah.
And I thought that was going to be, and it still will be for the girls, I'm sure, part of the mystery of it. It was like, if we're all in here, who burned the cabin down? The wilderness was angry at us. Like, the wilderness, like, doesn't think that, whatever. I don't know what.
Yeah.
But it's Ben, right?
It has to be.
Ben.
I mean, so they all get up. The fire's outside the cabin. Like, that's the thing that makes it obvious for the most part.
It's not one of the girls, at least.
Right. Like, it's all outside the windows. It's burning. I mean, they did have so many candles lit, but they try the door. The door is stuck. I saw some people said that it was, like, tied shut with the rope, but we don't actually see that. It could just be that, like, wood swells when it gets hot.
That's also true.
Doors do tend to get jammed in fires.
Right.
That's why metal fire doors are there. And I wrote down that Ty tried the quote unquote back door, but it wasn't the back door. It was actually Ben's room, I think, that she's trying to open. So I'm wondering, when we're talking about, like, are they going to know that Ben did it? Do they even know that Ben's not in the cabin at that moment?
Right.
Like, because he spends all his time in his room sulking. Like, maybe they think he's in there.
Totally.
But so Van starts kicking the door, and Ty grabs the hatchet. Everybody grabs what's close to them. Their pans and their blankets and their knives and their guns.
And their bombs and their bombs.
Exactly. Yeah. And they finally make it through the front door and watch it burn. And Lottie looks like she's laughing.
Oh, I wondered about her expression there. I couldn't tell if that was just a...
I couldn't tell either, and then I watched an interview with Courtney Eaton, and she basically confirmed that in that moment, to her, Lottie was laughing, because she was so, like... Just because she was so, like, holy shit, what the fuck?
You like it, like a, again, hysterical kind of
laughter. Just like, well, what now? You know?
Yeah. Sure, why not also this?
Yeah.
Well, we talked about the fact that, like, I mean, I think you called them, I don't remember if you did on the podcast, but I know that, like, losing the cabin is something that people were anticipating. Mm-hmm. And I know it's something you were kind of planning for as well. And we did talk on the podcast about, like, the stakes needing to be raised at... Yeah. In some way for season 3. So we've got it.
Yeah. And we see the smoke rising up over the cabin at night, which we know they still don't get rescued for
I've
another
heard a lot of people speculate.
Yeah. Yeah. No, this is not going to be the thing that makes them, that makes people find them, because A, it's at night. Mm-hmm. B, they're in the middle of nowhere. Mm-hmm. And I think there were some people that thought that the lights you see in the background when they pulled the camera back with the cabin on fire were like lights of a city or a town in the distance, but it really, I don't think it was. It was just stars.
Oh yeah, I didn't even notice that.
Yeah, so. I thought that was mainly to show exactly how isolated they were in that moment.
Right. Yeah.
And that there was a new pope.
Right, of course.
Yeah.
The new pope.
There's a new pope.
Yeah.
It's Nat.
Uh-huh.
All hail the new pope.
A good Italian
Natalie Scatorcio.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Her middle name's Marie.
It's got to be.
I know we don't know. I've so many people would be like something Italian Scatorcio, which is very funny.
There was a whole thread on... How many times am I going to talk about Reddit? There was a whole thread on Reddit at one point that was hilarious. It was about what their middle names would be. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you saw this, but it was like...
No, I missed that.
Somebody did say that Natalie's would be Marie.
100%.
And then because of the time frame, we were like, okay, so there's got to be a Lynn in there and an Anne.
Shauna Lynn.
Yeah.
Jackie Elizabeth.
Maybe. Yeah. Elizabeth was a big one back then. Yeah, definitely Natalie Marie Scatorcio. Mm-hmm. Okay. That's 96.
Oh, just a small note here, though, before we move on to 2021. Survivor count, we all keep going back and forth. We only saw the main group there.
Yeah.
And I think we pretty well narrowed it down. But wasn't there just a weaker, like within the last couple of episodes, did I make up us seeing 2 randos?
No, you did not. There were some new randos.
So I don't think they died in the cabin. I don't think that's what we're...
either.
Are we just supposed to assume? Because I was trying to, on my rewatch, keep an eye on who was scrambling out of the cabin, but most of them had blankets over their head, and I think it could just be that they're like positioned behind our main crew in that last shot.
Yeah, in that last shot, some people were like, "Oh, Akila's not there," but Akila's like behind someone. Yeah. I think we're supposed to assume that pretty much everyone made it out.
Yeah, because I'm just kind of less interested in the hunt of it all if we know we've only got... Yeah. I mean, I'm less interested in the hunt of it all in general. I've kind of come around to your place, but or to your point of view of this stuff. But I think we only have Akila, Mari, named characters, and Jen, who we could lose to the hunt at this point, right?
And Melissa.
Oh, I always forget about
Backwards
Melissa.
Hat Girl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or I'm sorry, then I always forget about Jen. I just think Melissa is Jen.
I still think that if Pit Girl, quote unquote Pit Girl, matters at all, it's probably Jen, because now I am convinced that Mari is the last, like, the survivor we haven't met yet.
Yeah, I agree. I don't have a ton of evidence for that other than that one. There was like an article early in, was it Entertainment Weekly? I forget, but some magazine where they asked the show creators to give the different or the different Yellowjackets superlatives, and they were all pretty on the nose, and it was early on.
Yeah, I can't find the original image of the whole thing, but the superlative that they gave Mari was most likely to contact you on Facebook 20 years after graduation to sell you something.
Oh, I found it.
What were some of the others?
Yeah, and so, for example, Akila and this is before season 2 aired.
Okay.
Akila most likely to talk to animals.
Oh.
Yeah, but she does.
I know. That's what I've...
Lottie most likely to accidentally start a cult.
Okay. Yeah.
Callie most likely to date someone who's already graduated.
Yeah. So they're more hints.
I mean, they're big time. Yeah. They're not subtle at all.
Yeah.
Thaisa, most two-faced.
Well, she is.
Literally. Yeah, literally. Shauna, most likely to throw the first punch. Misty, most likely to make a new friend. So it's like they're
all
telling
references
us,
to season 2.
And really direct references. So Mari's coming back.
Yeah. I think maybe she's one of our survivors. That's so interesting. Anyway, moving on to 2021.
More fun to be had in 2021 up to a point.
Up to a point, yeah. Yeah, we pick up right where we left off again. This whole 2021 in season 2 has taken like barely more than a week. That's wild. But we come back in with Lottie again saying it chooses. It won't stop till it gets what it wants. But she just goes for it and tries to drink one of the cups.
Yeah.
She's like, let's do this right now.
She's ready to go. The show is so sneaky with their previews because it's like, how did they all just agree with Lottie to do this hunt? And it's like, well, they didn't.
They didn't.
Like, Shauna was doing some Shauna shit, which I really loved.
Yeah. She's like, saying, oh, yeah, no, we have to do it the way we used to. We should give it a hunt. And Lottie's face in this whole episode is so heartbreaking. She's so far down the rabbit hole at this point. But she gets up and like they hug. And Shauna's like making eyes at everyone over her shoulder, like, "No, guys,
what else are we supposed to do?"
Yeah. So they all pretend that they're gonna do it the way they used to. Misty says we need masks and weapons. Nat mentions the cards with a single queen in them. Shauna tells Lottie she needs to make sure none of her people are here for it. Some foreshadowing, Lisa.
Yeah.
And then after Lottie leaves, they get much more honest about it. This is where I was starting to wonder if I was pretty sure Nat was going to die this episode, but the way this was set up in the beginning, it almost felt like Nat was going to kill Lottie because of the way they were talking about it. Like, Misty was talking about having her committed again, and everybody's like, seems to be on board.
As a medical professional.
As a medical professional, exactly. But the only people that are not fully on board with that are Van, who isn't not on board, but she kind of gets up and walks away in a way that makes it seem like she's a little upset by the idea. And Nat, who says something about, we can't just hospitalize her and call it a day. And I wrote down, what does she want to do? Because we see her get a knife later.
Well, yeah, but she also, she says a couple of things in this scene where I'm like, oh, we kind of went back and forth a little bit with how bought in Nat was with the whole, like, sunshine honey of it all. And we see in this episode that she hasn't gone back, like, really, at this point anyway.
So I think what's interesting is that she's bought in and not bought in at the same time. She's bought into some of the, like, she's bought into the, we need to deal with our shit. Maybe Lisa's right about the, like, facing suffering, but she's not bought into Lottie.
Yeah, it's like Nat wants to heal.
Yeah.
She's one of the only ones who wants to talk about it. I mean, she was in group therapy and rehab.
Yeah. But she's not following Lottie blindly into anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
But so they decide that they're going to call for a crisis team to come and get Lottie, which doesn't last very long.
No. Oh, the back and forth of all of this is so upsetting. And just all of them still deciding what they think is best for Lottie, whether that's call a crisis team, whether that's let her go through with the hunt. Like, just her complete, she thinks that she's got some agency here. When she says, like, the woods will be ours tonight, like, you can feel that she thinks she's getting some sort of control, that not control over the group, but just like over the situation to try to fix or save something.
Yeah.
And I hated all of this so much. It was so upsetting.
I hated watching Lottie's sort of facial expressions because there's such a desperation there for things to make sense and for things to be, like, quote unquote fixed.
And she's so scared and so confused.
And
and Simone is so good in this. Like, her face is.
Yeah, she was really haunting this episode. We get a little comic relief here now.
Thank God.
I know. Misty sneaks into her office looking, I think, for her meds so she can find her doctor's name to call them. But she also opens...
Dr. Brandt.
Yes. She also opens the cabinet, gets her phone out, sees the gun, takes out her phone, and then, of course, she hides because the door opens.
She's still coming in.
It's Walter.
I know I say this every time, and I know it's bait for...
Is it that you love Elijah Wood? Do you love Elijah Wood?
I love him
Was that what's
so
happening?
much. I love him so much, and Walter, obviously, so much it's like almost painful. Like I was talking with one of the hosts of one of the podcasts that I work on for my day job. So she was like, whenever he and Misty are on the screen, I just stand up and I yell, "I love them!" Like, I know.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
I told you they're like, it's like candy.
Yeah. She's happy to see him, you know.
Yeah.
Apparently her message to him was well received. But no, you hang up. He was probably on the other end doing it back.
Oh no. You're probably right. I'm going to cry.
Yeah.
He's just so... And I'm glad we have a Misty on this show, because a Walter would be unbelievable if I haven't spent the last, I guess, week or so getting to know adult Misty. That it's like, well, if there's a Misty, then there's got to be a Walter. Like, it's fine. Because he's so bought in. Like,
yeah.
She's like, what are you doing? He's like, I came to help you.
Yeah.
Like, obviously.
Yeah. But this is when Van decides that this plan is not the best. They're doing arts and crafts. They're literally, it looks, because this was a former like summer camp, this site, Camp Green Pine, the fact that they're sitting there like making crafty little masks is so funny to me. Like, there's something about, and we'll talk about it when we get to that scene, but there's something about the masks when they put them on in this context that is so fucking ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's so ridiculous. And it starts here where they're like sitting at a picnic table, like in, I think what was probably like a mess hall. You know, they might as well be like putting like feathers on paper plates.
Yeah. Well, and it's because it's so, what they're doing is outlandish. It doesn't make sense.
No.
The fact that, like, I know they're all playing along with Lottie, but we see that they're sort of not just playing along.
It kind of comes and goes. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, yeah.
Yeah. So Van's convincing Ty that they should call off the crisis team. She says, like, you know, if Lottie's sick, then so are you. We've all felt it in our own way. And she says, do you really think being locked up in a psych ward will help her? Would it help you? And I'm sitting there going, yeah. Yeah, please, Ty.
Van is her motivations are so hard to suss out, because it's like, part of it is she says like, we handle this ourselves, we protect each other. I think she says isn't that what we've always done, or whatever.
We swore we'd protect each other.
Yeah. And it's this thing of like, part of me feels like, I don't know if this is for later in the episode or not to really talk about this, but part of it is that I do think she feels some protectiveness and does think that it's like their responsibility to care for Lottie.
Yeah.
Though I would argue that providing care for Lottie might be putting her in the hands of medical professionals.
Right.
But then I think another part of Van still believes. I think that's why she was so resistant to going in the first place. Because we see when she gets to Camp Green Pine, how quickly she falls back into all of it.
It's like, funny because
resistance.
It's almost like her resistance is so over the top to it because she is actually like really moved by seeing Lottie again. And she's like, you know, protesting too much almost.
Exactly.
So she convinces Ty to call it off. Yeah. Which will have dire consequences. But Nat and Shauna are preparing in the kitchen. Which the interesting cover of Sad But True was playing in the moment. I hadn't heard that one before. But I
didn't catch who.
St. Vincent.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I wrote it down. I thought it was Pretty good, actually.
Mm-hmm.
But Nat's burning the other queen cards, and Shauna's dulling the knives. I thought she was sharpening them at first, and I was like, where are we going with this? But no.
But you could still hurt somebody with those knives, but...
Yeah, just, it would probably hurt more.
Yeah, right?
To be stabbed with a dull knife. But we see the queen, and we see Nat's sort of apprehensive face.
Yeah, she almost looks like she wants to say something to Shauna here and then doesn't. Yeah. I don't know.
Like a pregnant pause, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
But then we get to be in the car with Jeff and Callie for a minute.
Again, just these little moments of respite.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what we would do without Walter and Misty.
And Jeff.
And Jeff and Callie.
Yeah.
Jeff in particular, but yeah.
Yeah. They're talking about how impractical it is to just disappear. He says, we could never eat our favorite takeout or even Google ourselves again.
Google yourself?
I felt attacked by this. But this is when she finds out that he casually says he saw Shauna almost shoot a guy the other day.
Yeah.
And she's like, what? And she's like, Mom has a gun? And he's like, no, she took it off the carjacker. Like, Jesus. It's just all of these things that are being revealed to Callie should be much more shocking than
and also maybe not revealed to her
at all.
At all.
Yeah.
Jeff.
Yeah.
Some discretion for your poor child.
Yeah. I love this. He's like, it's in a safe place, and stares directly at the glove box.
He's such an
so
idiot.
Bad at this.
Such a buffoon.
He's so bad at this.
I still love him. And Callie, because she's smart and also was paying the least bit of attention.
Yeah.
Of course knows where it is.
Yeah.
And I love that she goes for it right in front of him.
Yeah.
She's going to check.
Yeah, and then we see some of the purple people coming towards the gate. She's like, this is where you sent Mom? Yeah.
I love Callie. Love Callie so much. Eating all that crow from my season 1 feelings. I really love her, Sarah Desjardins. She just, every time I see her talking about Callie on Instagram or whatever, she's always like, your favorite. Like, she knows now. She's like, yeah, I know y'all hated me. Yeah. And I know now you love me. And I'm never going to let you forget that.
Yeah.
So
as they pull out, they almost hit the cops who have followed them there.
Mm-hmm.
They back out, almost hit the cops. And then we get a quick flash of a Nat and Lisa moment right after
Harry
this.
And the Hendersons, get out of here.
Lisa's dyeing socks. Very important task.
Uh-huh. Well, everything's got to be purple. You got to keep your purple.
Heliotrope, Andrea.
Heliotrope, excuse me. Is this ashwagandha?
Yes. But so Nat is trying to warn Lisa. And this was heartbreaking. This was when I was like, we're losing Nat, because she said,
if we were 95% going in, this made it 100.
Yeah. She tells her to leave and something's happening tonight. She says, get yourself some regular clothes, go have a life. You don't have to be one of these people. And Lisa's just like, wait, but what the fuck? Like, what's happening? Yeah. And then this is where we knew, I think, because Nat says, I appreciate you trying to teach me forgiveness. It's a nice idea.
It's a nice idea.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in another life, or in another scenario, I feel like, Lisa and Nat end up with a more long-term bond where they like learn from each other and grow as humans.
Well, I think the sad part of it is I don't think Nat believes that like in another life, in a different version. I think Nat feels pretty sort of doomed no matter what, and that's why she's like, it's a nice idea, but for me,
at the same time, I don't think that she felt that way before everyone showed up. I feel like she was starting to think.
I think you're totally correct.
I think Lisa was actually getting to her.
Yes.
Because they related to each other so much that it felt like Nat was starting to see. Like, I wasn't sure if Nat was humoring Lottie or not. And I think that in some ways I was right and wrong. I think she was humoring Lottie, but she also was actually being affected by getting to know Lisa and, meeting someone who reminded her of herself and, but also had these ideas about suffering and forgiveness. Like, and so to see all of that get kind of thrown out the window when all of her old teammates show up was really sad.
It's really fucking sad. It's, it's like addicts. They tell you the first thing you need to do is cut ties with any of the people that you practiced your addictive behaviors with.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a version.
Yeah, they all show up.
That.
Hard to avoid.
Yeah, you hang around a barbershop long enough, eventually you're going to get a haircut. You hang around with the soccer team long enough, you're eventually going to hunt somebody.
Somebody's going to get ritually murdered.
Yeah, it's just the way it goes.
Or accidentally killed during a ritual murder.
Yeah.
So then we get the funny murder part of the show where somebody is killed and it makes us laugh, and then we wonder if we're bad people. Walter is stirring something on the stove, singing "Send in the Clowns."
My heart could burst. I could not. It is a perfect 10 seconds. It's so eerie, and he's lit so perfectly, and
it's really great. It's shot really well.
Good. It's very good.
Kevin walks in, and like Walter with the acting here, he's like. He says, "I'm going to call the police." And then he's like, "Wait, you're an honest-to-God detective?" So funny.
It's just so... Again, he knows he's got those baby blues, and they get so wide, and he's like laying it on so thick. And Kevin is disarmed. It works.
It does.
It works.
I mean, I don't know if I would drink something that person handed to me, but he does.
You could not... I think I'm probably highly suggestible and easily influenced. If I walked onto a compound that I knew was a cult, which he does,
and somebody wearing all purple
hands me a mug,
no.
I am Kevin.
Yeah, that's
also so anti-Jersey of you.
Yeah, that's first principles. You just don't drink some random cup of something that someone hands you.
Yeah, this is a man from New Jersey who does not have his head on a swivel, and I don't buy it. I don't buy it at all.
Also interesting that it was hot cocoa. Because isn't that what Jackie, quote unquote, drank in her near death or her death? But he offers him hot cocoa, and when they're talking about why Kevin is there, he's like, I'm here because of Shauna. Walter's like, oh yeah, she got here a few days ago. There's practically a coven of them.
A coven,
all up to no good.
I love it because Kevin thinks he's like cluing him in and conspiring. Walter is just sharing his admiration for this coven of women who are up to no good.
Yeah.
He's a serial killer, right?
Definitely.
He's got a history that we don't totally know about yet. It's not just aspirational like we thought maybe it was.
No. You look so happy about that.
I love it. I love this freaky little weirdo so much.
We see Callie and Jeff walking around in the dark, and they come up to the kitchen. This is one of the best lines.
We've got a
this
great
episode.
Jeff one-liner. Totally.
Oh my God. So Callie's saying, like, you're being awfully judgy about Mom when all this started thanks to your lame attempt at blackmail, blah, blah, blah. And Jeff says, the American family is crumbling, Callie. You try making a living in sectionals.
He's perfect.
It's great.
I just love him. I love him so much. So glad he's still with us.
Yeah. So he goes into the kitchen, confronts Kevin, and is trying to take the fall for Shauna, saying that he
sad
killed
and sweet.
Yeah, that he killed Adam.
Misguided.
Yeah.
Send your wife to jail, Jeff. I just think maybe send your wife to jail.
Callie's better off with him than he is with Shauna, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But mid-confession, Kevin just keels over.
He goes down so
This is
comically.
what I mean about laughing at the death of a character and feeling kind of like a bad person, because Kevin Tan really didn't do anything wrong. I mean, other than being a cop, but...
Right, yeah. He has a kid, right?
He's got 2 kids.
Don't we know that? Ugh.
Yeah. He's got 2 kids. Like, yes, we shouldn't be laughing, but the expression on his face as he's like processing what Jeff is saying and then suddenly just falls over backwards.
Those Sudeikis, man, because it reminded me of when Callie is like when in that interrogation scene at the station when Callie tries to tell him that she and Jay slept together, and he's like, oh Jesus, like he just is so done with these people. But.
Yeah, which it makes sense. I mean, when you think about
this
what
man's just trying to do his job.
Yeah, but Jeff is shaken by this. Was not expecting Kevin to just fall over. This is where we get the scene from the preview where Walter comes out, introduces himself. This was cute.
He just an absolute charmer. Good in a crisis too.
Yeah, well, I love the fact that like as Jeff is starting to panic, Walter gets very like sort sort of fatherly or teacherly. Like, he's like in control of the situation. He's like talking to himself. He's being like, it's okay, buddy. I know this is a lot, but I'm a friend and everything's going to be fine. Can you grab the legs?
He also, I loved. It was such a funny little detail when he's like, Jeffrey, does anybody call you that?
Yeah.
Jeff says,
yeah. Like, why is he lying?
He says,
makes no sense.
It's so funny. And it's such a, again, and this is one of the
he's so rattled.
The things that will keep me watching the show no matter what they decide to do or things like that. Because there's no reason for this. Jeff, so he says, does anybody call you that? And Jeff says, my mom. No, she doesn't.
Yeah.
Why exactly. Did you say that? It just sounds like your mom might call you that. And he wants to, like, Walter's got such a command of the situation and Jeff is so shaken, like rattled, like you said, that he just wants to, like, respond appropriately. Yeah. And it seems like the appropriate response at that moment is yes, my mom.
So the ritual is about to begin.
Yeah, we get a little moment of Lottie listening. She's like listening to the wilderness, I think, in that moment, right?
She also walks over to the cabinet where the gun was and sees that someone was there and smiles. Yeah. Which is weird.
Do you think she's like, Misty? Misty's at it again.
Maybe. I mean, I think that maybe it's just that there's more chance of somebody being sacrificed if there's a gun involved. Like, it's just sort of dark.
I didn't think that.
But they're all gathering. This is when Van officially cancels the crisis team. We see Nat putting a knife in her pocket. Misty and Shauna stand near the fire. Nat and them kind of join up. Van and Ty show up with the masks. Van like kicks at the fire to get it started or to get it going more.
And Lottie
comes out
in, again, an ecstatic state.
Yeah.
She's so, like, again, scared, but also kind of hype.
Oh,
like,
totally.
She's like...
She brought her own knife.
Yes, I'm sorry. There's something so funny and, like, weirdly, I almost want to say childish isn't really the word. I don't know what. But there's just something so... I don't know what the word is about them going through all of this trouble to dull these knives and do this thing. And then Lottie just shows up. Yeah. She's got her own knife.
Yeah. Yeah, that's not a lot of foresight there. Like she also owns knives, guys.
Yeah. She's like pumped about it. Like she's like, got my knife.
Yeah.
Like it's like,
yeah, exactly.
I'm only laughing because it's about to get so tragic.
Yeah. She says, it's time. Yes. So we're kind of flipping back and forth between the start of this ritual and the other shenanigans that are happening on the campus of good old Camp Green Pine. But Matt and Callie run into each other in the woods. And Callie's got the gun. She's got the gun from the glove compartment.
She's got the gun, and I don't like that she has the gun. That's an obvious thing to say. But it's also like the stakes at play here, like how real all of this has become. That even Callie now, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I hated seeing her with that fucking gun. I hate guns, but
but I think that that's part of what this episode is setting up. If we're talking about like, well, what's left to talk about next season? Like, part of it is sort of Callie's evolution into someone who is more and more like her mother. And the fact that she's running around, you know, holding a gun behind her back while talking to a cop, like that's Shauna levels of carelessness.
Yeah. And Jay can tell.
Yeah.
He can tell she's got a gun, but he's not particularly shaken by it. Like, I think he knows, like, Callie's not going to shoot him because he gets a phone call. And he's just like, just because he says, I'm going to need you to put your hands where I can see them. And she does not comply. Then he gets a phone call and he kind of, like, turns his back. Like, he's like, just hold on. I got it. Wait a minute.
Well, he's pretty cocky about his own abilities.
Yeah, that's true, too.
But this is, so I think part of the reason I'm struggling to talk about this is because this is where sort of the Walter as savior of everything starts to happen. And it happens really fast and it happens very cleanly and very like without question.
Yeah, but clean in a way that is like, it's clean on the surface.
Right.
But there's so many loose ends in what happens next.
Yeah. So basically, Walter has like recorded Kevin's voice as they've been talking and is playing it over the phone to Matt to draw him out to the car, I guess, and where he's put Kevin in the trunk. And then Matt shows up and he grabs his gun and shoots Kevin and then basically says, like, go along with this thing or I'll blackmail you with it's the fact that it's so hard to describe is I think what people are struggling with this episode.
Yeah, because it's like, why shoot Kevin if he's already dead? An autopsy's gonna know that right away, that he was shot not only after he died, but after he was put in the trunk of the car.
Right.
Like, there's no... And, like, Walter's wearing gloves, but everybody...
Is he? I thought he was, but some people said he wasn't.
I looked specifically for it in my rewatch.
Good.
In that scene where he takes Jay's gun, he's 100% he's wearing gloves.
Okay. I thought he was too.
He's at least wearing one on the gun hand, so maybe wasn't looking at the other hand. Maybe he's only wearing one glove.
Michael Jacksoning it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So
but he
basically convinces Matt to, like, go along with this idea that Kevin was a dirty cop and was, like, responsible for Adam and conveniently also Jessica Roberts. Like,
it doesn't, we know Jay's an idiot, but it just doesn't I just don't buy it. And what we see a little later gives the impression that he is going along with it, but I just don't know. I don't know that I buy that.
I know.
Because all he has to say is really weird. This random dude at this cult, guys, like, tries to pin. So, like, there's going to be a bunch of records and stuff, but he told me he was going to do it. He looks like Elijah Wood. He's not going to be hard to find. Like,
and I mean, I do think that this idea of, like, who will they believe? Like, I would think they would believe a cop over some, like, purple person that's at a cult.
Some, like, I mean, again, I love him. I think he can do no wrong. But some creepy little millionaire.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. So, I don't know. This was wild to me. This is where I started to get, like, a little...
I want to put a little pin in this. Mm-hmm. I know there are production and, like, meta reasons for why some of this, the people are speculating, may have happened. I don't think we have time, or I don't even really have the desire right now to unpack all of that. Mm-hmm. But next week we can definitely get into, if we want, reasons outside of the narrative why some of these choices were made.
Right. Yeah, and I think that a lot of that is just speculation, and so it's kind of hard to take it that seriously. But so what happens is Walter throws the phone in the trunk. They walk away. Then we see another scene. Then Matt comes up. Here's his phone. And then he grabs the gun. It's like the whole thing happens kind of back and forth. So we can just kind of say we've covered that. I do think it's funny that after Walter shoots into the trunk, he looks like he's having fun. And Matt's like, who the fuck are you? And Walter explains everything. And he says, it's called a narrative. Try to yes and a little here.
Oh, and he confirms Jessica Roberts is definitely dead.
Yeah. Which I thought, I mean, based on what I'd seen from the creators, I do think that we're seeing the absolute willingness of the writers of this show to just end a storyline without putting a nail in the coffin and just be like, nope, that's done. Like, we answered it. If you missed it, you missed it. But, you know, the obvious answer is the answer here. Yes, she's dead. Like, so
totally.
Yeah.
Despite all of us, myself included, wanting to refuse to believe that time and time and time again.
Yes.
But also, what is with Adam's tattoo?
And did Jeff send the postcards? Yeah.
A thing. Okay, but did Jeff send the postcards? Is like the fact that Adam's tattoo is out of that category for me now and into, okay, but actually I'm speculating is still infuriating to me.
Yeah.
Because I don't care who sent the postcards. Or it's not that I don't care. I'm just done. I'm done thinking about it until they tell me or don't. Yeah. But what the fuck is up with Adam's tattoo?
We may never know. This may be another one of those things. There's lots of things that they're just like, we're not going to actually answer this.
Usually I'm fine with it.
Yeah.
Usually I'm ready to go. Adam's tattoo, I'm still furious about. Anyway.
All right, let's stop avoiding talking about this.
Or I'm newly furious about it. I don't want to talk about it, Jodie.
I know. We have to, though.
I'd just rather talk more about Adam's tattoo.
I know, but we have to. The ritual begins. It's so serious and so silly at the same time. Like, so Lottie's showing the queen to them, just like they did in the cabin. Mm-hmm. None of them can fucking shuffle. Still. Still, Lottie is shuffling terribly. Shauna, trying to kill time, is like, I would like to shuffle them some more. And I'm thinking she's going to actually know how to shuffle.
I really thought, I was like, Shauna's going to know how to shuffle.
She still doesn't.
Cards.
No, none of them do. None of them know how to shuffle. There's a lot of sort of like people kind of hesitating and hedging here. Ty's like, can we please talk about this? And then like tries to get Van to back her up. And Van's like, no.
Yo, Van is...
She's in.
I don't know what to do with her in this scene. She even says, she's like, I think that's enough.
Yeah.
Like...
Yeah, she's the one that starts it. She says, she grabs the cards, pulls the first one, throws it in the fire. It escalates quickly, as they say.
Yeah.
And you do see a moment where Ty kind of like flips over to sort of like other Ty or whatever in this moment.
Tawny crushing it because
it's very clear when that
she
moment
like doesn't want to draw a card.
Yeah.
And Lottie says, Ty, are you refusing the draw? You know what happens if you do. And then she just shifts.
Yep.
And Dark Ty shows up and she's like, well, it's got to happen. So here I am. Hello.
And we don't know what that actually means. We don't know what happens if you refuse to pull a card, but it seems like it's happened in the past and it wasn't good.
But it seems like then you die, I guess.
Probably.
But like, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It just doesn't seem like that big of a leap. Although I guess the idea being that like at least, but then see, that's funny because that is not the wilderness choosing.
None of this is the wilderness choosing.
But I mean, how do they, but it's so important to them to pretend like it is.
But it's so not.
You can't pretend that if somebody refuses to draw that they're next on the chopping block means that wilderness chose that. There's nothing to.
Are you really trying to place logic on this card game of death? Because they're not very good at sticking to this logic.
Yeah, no. It's got like kind of like weird like time travel paradox energy of like just in the way of like you just can't think about it. It doesn't. You're right. It doesn't fucking make sense.
No.
And we're just gonna go with it. The wilderness chose because it chose, and we're just gonna keep saying it.
Yeah. Well, it's like Van insisting that when Javi drowned, you know, the wilderness chose for Javi to drown, even though they were trying to kill Nat. And they just let him die. And also,
it's like Lottie saying, "I thought," which I think would have been a cool little shift for us. It wouldn't have made a huge difference, but I kind of thought when Lottie said the wilderness already chose Nat, not because Nat survived, but because Nat drew the queen. Like actually what that draw is whoever draws the queen then is in the place of the leader, but that's not.
No,
we see that that's not the case because we do get somebody. Well, but we know that that's not the case.
Logic.
We see.
Is not important to them. And yet it seems very important, but it is not. So they go around a couple of times.
Which it seemed like the way Lottie says again seemed to me like they all thought, well, we made it around once, we're done.
Yeah.
And I was like, that can't be how they did it in the wilderness.
No.
Because then until what?
Yeah, exactly.
So I don't know what, that was a weird little.
Yeah, I think that in that, to me, it seemed like maybe they were still thinking, okay, we're humoring Lottie with this like facsimile of what we used to do,
right? But
not the actual thing. But Shauna pulls the queen. And they all just turn to the log and grab their dumb masks and throw them on and look insane.
Yeah, it's nuts because I think some of them are still playing along. Some of them are bought in.
Well, Misty...
Some of them are a little of both.
Yeah, Misty thinks that, and so does Nat, that the crisis team is still coming.
Yeah, right.
So they're trying to kill time, whereas Ty and Van know that they're not coming.
And they're trying to kill Shauna.
Yes, exactly. But honestly, those masks, like...
Yeah.
Like, this episode, to me, had some flaws. But that moment where they turn around, to me, was like this kernel of what the show actually is. Which is, they're so fucking self-serious.
Yeah.
And they look ridiculous.
Totally. They're just all so obsessed with their own lore.
Yeah.
And all that they think this is cool.
Yeah.
Like, they're like...
And one of them's wearing one that's like that bird that makes that sound in the woods. It's really haunting.
An owl.
You can't say it at all now.
An owl.
An owl.
An owl.
An owl. Yeah. An Al Bundy.
I was just gonna say an Al Bundy.
Yeah.
Or an Al Borland. Pick your 90s reference.
So basically Shauna's still like, hey guys, really? We're really doing this?
Yeah, she's like, I'm not playing along anymore.
Yeah, but Lottie says it's up to you. The way we used to, you can submit or you can run. Shauna's like, you've all actually lost your mind. You know there's no it, right? It was just us. And Lottie says, is there a difference? And this is the whole show.
That's the show.
That's the show.
Yep.
Right?
Well, and it's funny because we often think of Shauna as being the most sort of like fucked up of them, but she's the least bought in.
In this moment.
In this moment and in general, actually, I think she feels to me like the one who lives. I'm hedging, but the most in our version of reality in a lot of ways. Like,
yeah. I mean, other than Doomcoming, I think that we don't generally see her get super swept up in the woo-woo of it all, you know?
Exactly, yeah.
We do see her actively kind of pushing against it while she's pregnant and being like, you know, Lottie's being weird and freaking me out. So I think you have a point. I think that the only time we see her really kind of over the top with it is during Doomcoming.
Yeah. Yeah, and, you know, and them not making her leader.
Yes.
Probably really sealed.
Maybe she'd be more into it if they had made her leader.
Yeah, exactly.
But this is so awkward. She like turns away and starts to walk away, and like they start walking quickly after her, and then she starts walking faster, and then they start kind of moving quicker. And
it reminds me of like a Scooby-Doo montage.
Yeah.
Like I really wish we'd gotten just a minute of them like darting back and forth through the woods and in and out of cabins and stuff.
That's like really what it felt like. The like slow speeding up of the movement.
It's a little silly.
So Shauna ends up running, and they're chasing her through the woods, and suddenly someone shoots Lottie in the arm with a gun.
I just want Callie to be protected. Like
it's too late for that.
I care about these women, but I was like, as soon as Callie was there, I was like, get out of there. Like, get away from her.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's where we're going with this, right? Is like how it's passed down, you know?
Totally.
Like what happens to someone who's raised by someone like this? They become like this, you know? But Callie says, get away from my mom. And oh my God, Lottie in this moment, she does this like head tilt. That's very horror movie.
It's this little moment is chilling.
Yeah. Yeah. She says, is this your daughter? She's so powerful.
She's so bold. She's got a gun, so that'll do it. That'll do it, Lot.
And she sees this sort of as a sign, it feels like, that her daughter has shown up. She says, it's here with us now. Can you hear it? I was
really hoping that all of them seeing a young woman the age that they were while they had to deal with all of this would have snapped, and it sort of does for a couple of them, kind of, maybe, but I was really hoping, I was like, oh, this would be a really beautiful redeeming moment for them all to snap the fuck out of it and realize that they're dragging along another generation into this.
Well, and this is also where some of them find out that help is not coming,
right?
You know, and it starts to get even more real. Like
Ty narcs on Van real quick. She's like, not coming. It was Van's idea.
Yeah. And Van says it's not right. She's like this because of us. I felt so bad for Lottie in this moment because she's still so in her delusions, and they're just talking around her like she's not there.
It's something that I have a really hard time with in general, to hear people talk about somebody in the room like they're not there and making these decisions.
Yeah. Lottie's still trying to get them to listen to the wilderness.
Yeah, what do we hear? It's, again, very sad to see her try to, like, keep them with her in this moment. And it's so fucked up because it's like, yeah, a lot of Lottie is like this because of you guys very directly. So leave her alone.
Yeah, so don't encourage this behavior.
We see just in a few minutes, like, Van is at least halfway full of shit. I think part of her believes this, but there's another part of her that is being so selfish.
Right.
Here, I think.
Yeah. And Lottie is saying, like, that it's in each of them. And she kind of talks about, like, when it was in each of them at these different times. And she says that Nat was its favorite, which sent a chill down my spine. And Nat starts having these flashes of like her with the rifle. We see young Nat with a knife in the woods. It's clearly something is coming to a head. And then Lisa steps out of the woods with the rifle.
God damn it, Lisa. Stop giving people guns.
This is the problem with being so deep in on this show, is this was a very popular theory that Nat was going to save Lisa and die as a result, because of everything that had been set up about the idea of redemption and the idea of like Nat being the one who was supposed to die. And so when it actually happens, instead of being like, holy shit, that's so meaningful, a lot of people, including me, were like, well, yeah, that was the most likely outcome.
Right. Well, and it's also, we were prepared for that, but the reason for it, I hated. And Nat's, as I'm talking about this is interesting. Nat's, so Lisa's got the gun. She's maybe going to shoot
Nat.
And she says, like, this is another example of like somebody not having the whole story, because she says you killed people.
Right.
Which is true, but contextually there's some stuff going on there. And Nat hasn't killed anybody in 2021.
No.
And in fact, Nat hasn't killed anybody in 96.
No.
She watched Javi die, but Lisa doesn't know any of that.
Yeah.
So.
And I think we're being led to believe that once Nat becomes leader, she plays along and does some shit that is worse.
But for Lisa, like, what needed to happen here was for everybody to stop screaming and for Nat to say, well, yeah, but you're missing some context here. Let's put the gun down. Let's have a little talk.
Yeah, but Misty is a little too unhinged for that, unfortunately. Because as soon as like the things seem to be coming to a head, Misty needs to get involved.
I also thought this for Misty was, well, no, I guess this isn't actually out of...
She was protecting Nat. Yeah. She charged at Lisa like she charged at that plate of cocaine.
Totally,
She was going to get in the fucking way of whatever was about to harm Nat. It was funny to me that there's all this phenobarbital just floating around, but actually that needle was probably the one that Misty brought in with her. Because remember when she takes all the stuff out of her pockets and it's like she happens to have a syringe? That's like her fentanyl stash.
Yeah.
So Misty charges. Nat sees all of the things that she feels she's been responsible for in these different flashes. She sees young Nat. She sees Javi falling through the ice. She sees her telling Coach that she let Javi die. She gets the flash of Misty at the woods party. The premonition.
Are we going to talk about that next week or this week? Because I've got a lot to say about that.
We may need to save that for next week.
We'll save that for next week, listeners.
But so Nat turns and tries to block Lisa from Misty and her needle, and Misty stabs her in the chest with the syringe. And then Lisa turns and runs away, which is the smartest thing that she's done so far.
It's also the last we see of Lisa.
Yeah, she just fucked off into the woods.
The way all this story is going to could come crash again. So many loose ends that are so loose at the end of this, even though they're playing it like it's tidy.
Yeah, Lisa's definitely one of those. But this is heartbreaking. Misty killed her best friend.
Yeah. And one of them asks, I think it's Ty, says, like, what do we do? Mm-hmm. And, like, just, again, immediately to Misty, in these moments, they're just so used to Misty
having an answer.
And for Misty to say nothing.
Yeah, it's too late.
It's so sad.
And then we get... So this is another sort of moment that I wasn't super...
Yeah, I hate this. This makes no sense.
No.
The plane makes no sense.
I know. I hated it. It felt like they thought they were doing something and they weren't doing what they thought they were doing.
Yeah.
So we see Nat in an empty plane sitting right in the center by herself, looking super scared. Camera's a little shaky.
This is what's fucked up about us losing Nat this week, is how scared and she did not want to die.
No.
In this scene.
No. And it's like, we had been led to feel by the way this was set up that like this was some noble sacrifice that she made. But she didn't want to make that noble sacrifice. Mm-hmm. So, you know, she's on the plane. We're getting these flashes back and forth of them trying to, you know, the scene of Ty being like, what do we do? And Misty being like, there's nothing we can do. And so we see her start to cry, and like young Lottie appears, puts her hand on her chest.
Why is Lottie on the plane?
This was a weird group of people to have at her death. It was young Lottie, and then herself as a teenager, and Javi, but no Travis. And like, I don't know.
Why is there a living person on her plane?
I know, because all of these have been sort of like death experiences, unless Lottie dies. But no,
or is already dead.
No, and she's not Mari. No,
purgatory. No. Oh no, I was gonna say purgatory.
Okay, yeah.
I like that you're happier. Hold on. It says a lot that you'd be happier if it were purgatory than Mari is Lottie.
Yeah, no, I'm not in on that. But I wanted more for Nat and her death. I understand that there is some sort of poetic reading of this that is like, well, we don't get those nice, neat endings where, you know, she gets to sacrifice herself and is happy about it and all of that. The thing that's hard about it is that she's portrayed in season 1 as this sort of out of control addict that's like so focused on Travis and his death. And she finally in season 2 starts to get a little bit of control of her own healing. Mm-hmm. And then to just be cut down like this and like taken out by her past, it just feels wrong. Yeah. And like maybe that's the point, but still it feels wrong. And I mean, maybe what they're doing now is, you know, Nat's going to do some real rough, terrible shit next season. And maybe we won't feel this as strongly, but it really felt like they just made this death unnecessarily like scary or upsetting or something. I don't know. I didn't feel good about it. I didn't feel like we had enough sort of reasoning behind it or like way to process it. And I mean, maybe, like I said, maybe that's the point. But for somebody who...
I don't know what I would need it to be to feel, because there's a way to feel satisfied with maybe that's the point. You know, like I don't know what they could have done to make me feel that way about this, but I think it felt really rushed is my issue.
It did. It
didn't feel like authentic to the story.
Yeah.
Or like
it felt like they were like, this is the last episode. You know, Juliette Lewis isn't coming back. We have to kill her off. We have to do it in this time frame. We're going to do it this way and we're going to execute it. And it's like, but you weren't leading up to this in a way that feels like it makes sense. I think the plane scene is what really broke me, because I feel like, okay, you have to kill her off. Okay, you're going to do it in this way where she sacrifices herself for someone else. That's fine. Why put her on a fucking plane with these apparitions of other people? Like, it just didn't tie it up for me. It didn't make sense.
Yeah.
You know, we see young Nat say, this is exactly where we belong. We've been here for years, which is like, and then Lottie says it's not evil. It's just hungry. You've got to just let it in. Like, it didn't make sense.
Yeah, it was really upsetting. I hope Nat comes back as a ghost and she's been haunting the wilderness actually forever, because I guess that's how ghosts work.
Sure.
I'm into it. And maybe then the premonition of Misty at the party is a hint that Nat also is ghost.
We said we were going to talk about that next week.
That's next week.
Yeah. So anyway, the season ends with the aftermath of all of this. The cops are there. They're putting Lottie in an ambulance. Misty sees Walter and says, I killed my best friend.
Walter's so pleased with himself because he runs up. He's like, the Adam Martin, like, he took care of it. Yeah.
Yeah. But he hugs her. This is where we see Matt, as you said, seeming to be playing along. And then Lottie and Van and Ty are talking, and Lottie looks at Van and says, we gave it what it wanted. It is pleased with us. You'll see.
You'll see.
And this
Van's like, cancer's cured.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Yep.
I'm all set.
Yep.
Which I think might happen.
The show could go either way.
The show is one of the things now, after all that shit talk, which I think was deserved. Something I love about this show is that it does both things at once, where it's like sort of playing with the is it supernatural or not, kind of, but it's also very real in how it handles these things. So like we could still lose Van, or Van could make a kind of recovery that then, I don't know.
Yeah, it could go either way. But these are sort of like the little breadcrumbs they're leaving for us to think about for next season. One is Van's reaction to that comment, where she looks simultaneously like terrified and hopeful. We see Shauna looking at Callie, looking at what's going on, and Callie looking sort of like maybe into it and maybe like energized by this whole thing, and Shauna looking worried. That's another sort of little breadcrumb for us to kind of mull over. And then Ty and Van walk away together, and lights out.
And then we see the cabin burn down, whatever.
Yeah. It's not fully lights out because we go back to 96 for the end, but
I was so mad. I was so mad at this. I think I texted you like, send all of these women to jail. Like, I just am good. I'm done. I never need to watch the show again. I don't feel that way now, obviously.
Yeah.
That was that was not my wise mind prevailing in that moment. But I hate that the cops say they call it in a middle-aged female deceased of an apparent drug overdose.
Right.
If there weren't so many other things happening, because it's like cops are, in general, hashtag not all cops, what the fuck ever, sympathetic toward
addicts.
Yeah. And so,
they would have
of course,
assumed that. Yeah.
Their first thought is drug overdose. And if not for the cop who also dies on that scene, like, that probably would just get swept away like that. But I don't know how you have two people, like, I just really hope that, and this show has been better than this all along. I just hope that they didn't actually set all of that up to give us a nice tidy bow so that season 3 can be them getting into new hijinks or something.
Right.
Like, I just don't buy that.
Yeah, no, it felt, it was like whiplash, like all that happening so fast. And yet at the same time, some really rough stuff happened in 96, and that didn't feel that way. Even the cabin burning down didn't feel like that.
Yeah.
And that was a big moment, but it felt fully like just a logical thing to me that, like, also kind of, I don't know, I just watched the new special they made about the Rutgers? Wow. The rugby team. The rugby team that crashed in the Andes. And one of the things that happened to them was they were surviving, barely, but surviving with using the remains of their flight mates. And then there was an avalanche. And it was this sort of like natural disaster moment of like, are you kidding me? Like, right. we're barely surviving, and then this happens. And that's kind of felt like the cabin burning down. Like, you thought it couldn't get worse. Guess what?
Right. Yeah. And it's also the fact that we were calling something like that, if not necessarily the cabin, but just like the feeling of, okay, now this is the point in the story where stakes need to be raised. Like, you can forecast or foreshadow these kinds of things in a way that it feels not heavy-handed, but also makes things feel like you're not being blindsided. Like, you can do that, and this show has done that over and over again. And so for Nat's death to feel so inevitable and also so unsatisfying, like, they really dropped the ball somewhere, and I'm still not totally sure where on the timeline.
I know. I'm interested to go back and do a little bit of, like I said, not a full rewatch, but do a little bit of a rewatch, knowing what we know now, and see maybe if there were things that were kind of placed in there to get us to this point that maybe I missed. But I don't know. I thought the 96 timeline tied itself up in a way that, like, put a period on the sentence, but then also opened up lots of new possibilities for what's next.
Absolutely.
Which I thought was, I was so happy to have that at the end after I had watched the whole thing with Nat and then felt kind of like, oh, fuck. And then, but then at least we have something going on in 96 that kind of is raising the stakes, also feels earned in a way.
And also because I hate all of these women now. I don't actually, I'm just so mad. But I got a weird, perverse kind of like, oh, did you lose your cabin? That's what you get for killing Nat in 2021.
Yeah, I don't think it works that way, but I get it.
Time is a flat circle.
Time is a flat circle. Yeah, so I think we can talk maybe a little bit about what we think happened here, but then maybe save the more deep dives for next week. Mm-hmm. I was trying to find a way that it wasn't Ben that burned the cabin down, but I can't imagine, unless it was the wilderness.
The wilderness.
There really was no one else.
It's Ben and they deserved it. Everybody being like, oh, now Ben's also irredeemable because he tried to kill a bunch of... I'm like, yeah, but did you see?
I know.
Like, just imagine what you've been watching as Ben at this point.
I mean, I think at this point he feels like it's this or he's next.
It's this or he's next, and also these girls are just going to continue brutalizing each other.
Yeah.
And then eating each other.
Yeah.
I don't think he thinks rescue is coming, right?
Right. Yeah. I still think that lighting a cabin on fire with a bunch of teenage girls in it is not really something that is a redeemable act. And also, I feel like after what we just watched them do the past couple of episodes, it's not that big of a stretch either. Like we've seen him removing himself more and more from the group and watching them from a distance with, increasing horror. So
the only one he liked even a little bit
was Nat.
In that group was Nat, and now he again
and Javi. He had a bit of an appreciation for Javi.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I don't know.
I get
it, man. I get it.
Well, now we gotta see.
I hope he makes it to 2021. I really do.
I can't imagine how.
No, you don't think so?
I want him to. And anything's possible. It's certainly possible, but it doesn't. Often the obvious answer is the answer in this show and in many other shows. And the idea of somebody with one leg who has been ostracized and tried to kill the only other people out there with him, apparently, theoretically, somehow surviving another year.
I don't think the girls are going to assume that it was Ben who burned that cabin down. I don't, and I think the only one who might is maybe Nat, and I could be wrong, and the show could do a lot of things, but I just think that I don't think she's going to sell him out.
I mean, that could be the turn, though, that like if we are going to assume that Nat gets worse as a person, and in order to justify all of this guilt that she seems to hold, I could see her, turning on him and being like, that could be sort of the direction her personality goes. I don't know that I would feel that was earned, but I could see it happening.
Yeah, I guess we'll see.
Yes, we will. And so next week, we will discuss theories for season 3. We will discuss... I may go on a rant about the postcards. I may not. We'll see.
I got a lot to say about Misty in the Woods.
Yes. I think it'll be a nice sort of wrap up of season 2 conversation about the more like long-term themes that we've been examining, but haven't had a chance to really get into because of like the recap format. Maybe some superlatives of our own. Who knows?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So we'll get there.
Yeah, and let us know if there's anything you want to hear, anything that you've been thinking about that you want us to address in the episode.
Yeah, we could talk about Lisa's outgoing message on the phone. Yeah, there's definitely some stuff that I'd like to have a deeper dive into. We could talk a bit more about the way that the music has worked this season, because we've mentioned when songs kind of are used in interesting ways, but not really gotten into overall their use of music in season 2 versus season 1.
Yeah, we had a cool instance this week about a cover and the original being used in an episode in the episode in a really interesting way.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot to get into for sure. And we'll also let you know next week what's coming up. What we're gonna plan to do with the
with the pod
with our break. Yeah.
One thing I would like to know from some of our listeners are best lines for the season from them.
Yeah.
What they think.
Yeah, and if they want to let us know, where should they do that?
Oh, great question, Andrea. They should do that either at our Instagram, which is WatchersPodNJ. That is also our Twitter. They can go there. They can also email us at watcherspodnj@gmail.com.
We got a really lovely email from somebody who did not say whether or not we could say her name, so I'm not gonna, but a really lovely email from a South Jersey listener, so I just want to shout you out. You know who you are. Also, someone who's been to some Y100 festivals, which I mentioned earlier on. If we're going to talk about 90s music in New Jersey, for sure. You can't let that go unmentioned. And we love hearing from folks.
Yeah,
and
especially if you're from North Jersey.
Because here's the thing. Because in the grand conversation here in New Jersey and further out, it's North Jersey that's really lacking.
We're neglected
in representation.
We don't get talked about enough.
Totally.
It's all South Jersey, blah, 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 all the time.
Yeah. Well, we want to hear from everybody from all over, but especially North and or South Jersey.
Yes. Central, no, I'm kidding. I'm fucking kidding.
I think our Yellowjackets are Central Jersey girls.
I know, right? They are. I mean, they're shore girls. It's we're not doing this again. Okay.
It's
anyway,
thing,
yes. We will see you next week with a season wrap conversation. And until then, everyone get your marshmallows out, have some s'mores, and we'll see you next week.
Goodbye.